thank you to everybody who
Everyone.
has tuned in tonight. And I'm so delighted to be chatting to Seyon. We're going to be delving into topics from my book, Fashion Stylist: Seven Proven
Mhm.
Steps to Build a Banging Portfolio, a Powerful Network, and Make Shit Happen. And every episode, I have an incredible guest from the fashion and creative industry. And tonight, I'm so thrilled to welcome Seyon Amosu. So, Seyon has been working as a creative director, stylist, and image maker. He's worked with magazines like Dazed and brands like Nike. So, you have really been working at the top of your game. So, it's such a pleasure to have you here this evening.
Thank you. Oh my God, that was a lovely introduction. I'm so
Oh,
humbled to be here with you. Well, it's amazing. Thank you for
great.
having me. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's kick off then talking about the image making process. So,
Yes.
in my book, I've written a whole chapter. I've basically broken down the image making process into 7 steps. So it's easy for up and coming creatives to break down the shoot process. And the very
Yes.
first step is how to get inspired, which is so important. And I'm always saying to people, okay, it's really great that you're looking at fashion and really great that
Yes.
you're looking at like fashion history, but you
Mm.
also have to look outside of fashion and really absorb lots of things, lots of different cultural references, different perspectives, lots of different ideas. And
Yes.
I always find I don't necessarily get my ideas where I'm just sitting at a desk being like, oh, I have to be
Yeah.
creative now. It's
Yeah.
usually when I'm out and about, like walking around, when I've seen a piece of art or I don't know, been to a music festival, or I just caught a
Yes. Of course.
vibe, or it's a building that I walk past. So
Yeah.
I really wanted to hear about you. Like, how do you get inspired and how do you bring lots of different cultural references and nuances into your work and make it your own?
Awesome. Thank you for that. That's a very, yeah, that's a very important question, especially for creatives. And I think, similarly to you, Christine, my inspiration really comes from like a lot of different places. But I think before I get into that, I think it's important to talk about what drives me in the first place. And just like, what I care about. And for me, it's storytelling and like trying to tell the truth from, my perspective, or not just my perspective, also objectively as much as I can. Um, and just not putting judgment on wherever, I guess, like the story I'm trying to tell is. So I think that's like the motivation to begin with. Um, but aside from that, I'm really interested in also drives me is I'm interested in telling stories about real people and really exploring like experiences that other people go through in their day-to-day lives. And also, really and truly, to be honest, I people watch a lot. So I
I love
literally
this.
observe. So I really observe and I people watch. I also find that again for building a community of people and like maybe choosing family and friends, wherever you are is really important as well. Because like you said, I could just go on a night out and I just see characters everywhere, and these characters make their way into some of the stories I tell. And also, it's also part of my upbringing because I grew up in a very culturally um, vibrant and vibrant society. Um, and imagination and creativity were a big part of like my everyday life. I was that part of that generation who grew up playing outside in the compound with other kids, making cars and different things out of like wood and like canned bottles openers. Do you know what I mean? So my environment really taught me how to be resourceful at a very young age, and also just be able to gain inspiration from anything really around me. And I think, and then as I grew up, that I started making connections, right? To like social things, to political things, like religion, like culture. So that really helped me, and like on the foundational level, to prepare me for like the career aspect of it. and then me deciding to go to university, which really helped me, which is where I met you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people there, and including yourself and people like Pierce Atkinson really helped um, educate me as well in terms of like, I guess the Western aspect of what maybe fashion is, or like, and just giving me that what do you call it, that context to it. And that was the way I was able to, I guess, shape that and form that into like something like that visually like resonates, if that makes sense. And also those things that I had done, like I said, growing up, like engaging in like different things. If it's to us playing outside or singing in the church, or all these different life experience, and me really interested in people and meeting people and engaging with them and seeing what makes them like tick, or why they do what they do. Um, yeah, all of that I think really came together in a way for me, and it's still something that I still embrace and I still do, and I still try to remain present in that, and use that to like, yeah, to feel my work, and yeah, I think that's it. Also, I think for me, where I grew up also came with certain limitations because it was fairly conservative as well. So that also sparked an interest for me to um really be interested in like pushing against that in some ways, and also like, finding other people that I feel like might be censored in a way, or might be judged in a way, and trying to connect like that in the story, and like just telling the story truthfully without judgment, and basically trying to put all of that in context of humanity, that we are all connected, we all, have these stories that we literally all connect to in one way or the other. Or even if you don't connect to it directly, you can see the humanity in it because you're also human yourself. So yeah, I hope that answers the question
That's a
essentially.
beautiful
Yeah. So
answer. You're
yeah.
ticking all of my boxes. I'm like, yes, we could do a whole podcast about that one answer. I
Awesome.
mean, you said so many beautiful things. And, I totally agree. We're always
Yeah.
creating these characters, and it is about the storytelling. And this is so huge. And you mentioned it, being present. That's the
Yeah.
one thing I always say to people, just like, if you learn to meditate and be present, you can see everything. All of that instant, like it's already there. The magic is there. You just gotta filter it and interpret it into your work. So
Exactly. Yeah,
I
exactly.
love the
Because
answer.
yeah, yeah. No, thank you. And yeah, like you just to buttress on what you said, like exactly, because it's us, right? It's we all have very specific, unique perspective. Like of course, like I said, there's relations, there are other people that might agree with your perspective or see it in a specific way. But in all composite of who you are, that perspective is unique. There isn't that anywhere else. So it's important that you know that you're actually living that every day. The inspiration really starts with you and how you see the world and everything you're taking in. So yeah, that's it basically. Yeah,
Fantastic. So let's move on, because when we're working with a team, and I have,
yes,
I mean, various different chapters in the book, but the one that I want to talk about is the chapter called The Relationship Between the Photographer and the Stylist, because that's
nice.
a very creative partnership.
Yes,
And actually, at the end of the chapter, I added it's a bonus, and it's about 4 pages on how you can develop a 5 minute a day photography research habit
hmm,
and learn how to decode photography the way you would as if you were decoding a painting.
right.
Um, and I think, what I see online nowadays is sometimes there's a lot of stylist courses on Instagram. It's become very trendy, and it's like you learn body
Yes,
shapes, which are completely Eurocentric anyway to start with. So you learn the
yeah,
Eurocentric body shapes, and then you learn how to color match, and then that's it.
right.
Go, you're a stylist. And I completely lament that people think that is literally the only
The only
thing
thing.
about being a stylist, is because it's absolutely overlooking the storytelling, as you say, which is hugely central. the, really fine tuning and developing your visual sensibility. But that entire image making process, which involves numerous
Mm.
creatives, like there's so much more to being a multifaceted artist. And I think this is what people don't realize. They think, oh, you
Yep.
just get some clothes, and you're like, no, I'm actually someone who's like a multifaceted artist that's bringing so much together and
Yep.
balancing so much. So what I'd like to ask you, for any aspiring stylists who are watching this, like, what tips would you give to them to fine tune that visual sensibility,
Mm.
so that they can create work that's deeply personal but also well informed?
Yes. Oh my God. Wow. That is also like another great question, Christine.
We
Thank you for that.
need to do a
So,
podcast. Let's
no,
just do
for
a
real.
podcast. Yeah.
No, because honestly, you make a great point. And I think this is something that I say to like younger creatives when I'm asked like similar questions. Because I think creating like deeply personal work um it's not, I think, like you said, people think that's all there is, like, maybe this different aspects that we know for styling is all there is. But I think actually creating deeply personal work can be a very painful process, um but also is very incredibly rewarding when you're like, you know on the other side of the process. But I think it's important to say that process is very important. I think I want to lay out some of the processes here because, like you mentioned, people just think it's just, color matching and then learning the shapes. I actually didn't learn anything about that.
Neither, and I don't do those things either.
No, I don't implement
I
them.
don't do
I
it.
think, yeah, because I think those things really and truly, if you, as a stylist, you'll know that those things come to you instinctively,
Naturally and
naturally.
instinctively.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. It's important to say that, of course, like on it, like maybe theoretical aspects, like color theory, for example, it's important. Like knowing like, okay, maybe in some cultures this color means something. Like, okay, in red might mean danger in some cultures, and in other cultures it might mean romance, right? So things like that, maybe yes, important education, like which are the aspects for you
Mm.
to that comes with research and throwing yourself into those things. But then on the practical and logistical aspect of styling itself, it's not glamorous for one. There is a lot of real hard but physical work,
Yeah.
emotional work, if you'd agree with me. And
Yeah.
also just like, you know like what's the word to use? I think you have to be someone that's able to handle different things at the same time, as well, because you're essentially a creative director, and I'm not just throwing that word out there loosely, but in the end that's really who you are, because on set, if there is anything wrong in any aspect, who do they come to? They come to you, the stylist. In the end, you're the one that have to rectify, oh, does this make sense with that, and does that make sense with that? And it's not
Yeah.
just about aesthetics and how things look. That's why we come back to the storytelling. It's the storytelling that informs what should, in my opinion anyway, and in my case, is what informs what I do. And I think that you see that in the best sort of, I guess, stylists that there is, that the storytelling does inform, because when you're looking at an image, yes, you're trying to do what you're trying to read. You should be reading that image like you're reading a piece of art, because it should be saying something. Um, I I get that with fashion. I think people misconstrued maybe different type of fashion worlds or different type of fashion people, in the sense that yes, there are people who make things for aesthetic reasons, in terms of this looks too good with this, and that's great. We're trying to sell a product. Not knocking that or saying anything is wrong with that in a
Yeah.
business wise, but I think for people who truly care about saying something, where you know, fashion or styling is also an art form, it's important to say that, you need to actually do the work. It's not something that, yes, of course, you loving it and being passionate about it to begin with, not even just, maybe not even just styling, but just like I said, storytelling and wanting to use clothing as is a tool, because that's what it is. It's a tool to tell that story. Yes, that way, you need that part, you need that to, to fill you, to that would fulfill you naturally. And that's what would help you. But the process itself takes a lot of stamina, a lot of your time, a lot of emotions, both up and down. Um, and yeah, really being studious, I think, and sometimes doing things that other people wouldn't do, making sacrifices that other people might not be willing to make, for the long term of your career. Um, and yeah, that way you also, I think, yeah, I think that way you're able to navigate better in
Yeah.
in an industry where you have a lot also thrown at you from the
Yeah.
outside. There's a lot of pressure on you on set or behind the scenes. Like I said, as a stylist, you're literally the custodian of the entire production, really. And you
Mm.
have to know that, because if you're not prepared for that, also you end up being in a situation where you know you're now being blamed and you don't know how to handle it, or you
Yeah.
instantly think, no, but this is not my fault. I think I did my job, but you
Yeah.
actually haven't, gone through the scope of it, because it's not just about putting the clothes together. You have to know what light is doing. You have to know what the camera is doing. You have to know what the model is doing. You have to know what the movement is. You have to know every single aspect, set, production, timings, just all the logistics that goes into it that you won't also learn if you are not experiencing, right? If you're not, you know, going, maybe having mentorship, for example, with some of the people that you might think are walking the walk, in what you're trying to do and the path you're trying to go. So, yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm
That
trying to
totally
think
answers it. Yeah, you're literally, as
if
you're
I've
saying
missed
everything, you're
anything.
hitting every point in my chapter that I
Okay,
that I
good.
wrote. I'm like, yeah, that's totally it. So
Mind
yeah,
you, I need to read it.
there's a lot to do, and I always think you've got to be really grounded and rooted in yourself and know who you
Absolutely.
are, because there's so
Yes.
many things coming at you, and you just have to be really calm and like have your vision, have your voice, take feedback, but also be able to give feedback and be non-reactive. I think that's you got to have a certain, I don't know if it's like a personality or a mentality, or there's something internally that you have to be a stylist to be able to succeed
To
in those
succeed,
type of
yeah.
environments all the time, day in, day out.
Yeah. No, 100%. I agree. And I do think it is important to say, you know, of course you are dealing with different characters and all of these things, but it's also important not to lose that core of yourself. And I think that's what you're pointed to, like in terms of being grounded. I think you really have to keep remembering who you are, like who that person is, when you're behind the closed doors and no one is watching. Not, what I mean, who are you? And yeah, I think if you keep going back to that person or that inner child or that, yeah, I think that helps a lot, because at the end of the day, we're not perfect. And also, which brings me to some of my point, what I was thinking earlier, um, that how it's important to really throw yourself and allow yourself make those mistakes in the
Yeah.
beginning as well, because then you don't want to make those some cost. That's some of the best advice I actually got, and you don't want to make this mistake in the future, or when, like, your career is at maybe certain stage, because then you're not afforded that mistake. But of course, yeah, there's very higher risk or consequences for that mistake, so to say.
Yeah.
Um,
So I think that
Unfortunately, in our
brings me
industry.
really well onto the next question about
Oh,
learning on the shoot. So I've written an entire chapter called Assist an Accomplished Stylist.
ah,
And you very kindly contributed to that chapter,
that part,
Seyon.
yeah.
So Seyon is actually in my book. So I personally never assisted anybody. So when it came to writing the chapter, I could totally give my perspective on what I would look for in an assistant.
Yes,
But
yeah,
then when it came to successful creatives who had started their career assisting, I called upon yourself and also Angelo Mythikos, who's the fashion editor at GQ.
Yeah.
to give your perspective.
Right.
And I remember you from, from years ago, and I do say this in the book that you assisted a lot of top stylists. You just threw yourself in there and assisted. But crucially, you also worked really hard to build your own portfolio. You were so driven to do the two at the same time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the time that you had actually graduated, you had a really powerful network. You had this explosive portfolio, which then saw you in demand as a stylist in your own right.
Mm.
Um, so with this in mind, because we're kind of talking about it going down that road, like how
Yes.
can aspiring stylists find established stylists to assist?
Right.
And what tips would you give, say, for someone who's showing up on their first day, who is
Mm.
probably going to make those mistakes? Like, what tips
Yeah.
would you give someone for their first time assisting?
Okay. I think to answer the first part of the question, about how do you find stylists? Honestly, for me, for example, personally, it was like down to research, again, to some extent, and also just organically meeting people as well. Like when I say research as well, it's not just research. I really like using those kind of words anyway, research or networking, but let's
Yeah,
just put that in that context, for people to
yeah,
understand. But I think it's more being genuinely drawn to like wherever you're drawn to. So for example, whose work you drawn to personally, that speaks to you, and you kind of investigating that, like what is it about this that speaks to me and why am I so interested in it? And I think finding this kind of people in either, for your favorite magazines or your nowadays, on Instagram or blogs or whatever the case may be, and don't be afraid to reach out to them. I know, yes, it can be difficult at times, and you might get a lot of no's or you might even get ignored. But I am a firm believer that in some to some extent, what is for you and what you attract will attract you back. And I think that is truly important because it does happen. I have I've experienced it myself. Um, and I think also in conjunction with that, like you said, Christine, like also I think it's important for you to start experimenting yourself at
mm,
whatever stage, whatever you can do. It doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to share it with the world even. You can just start doing things that you want to do, even if it might not turn out how you want it to turn out. And that's what I mean by like the process is more important than even the outcome, especially at the early stages, because you're still finding, your own voice, and that's how you're going to know what, works for you and what doesn't, but from an aesthetics perspective, but also from a storytelling perspective as well. That's how you find out. And I think, yes, I would say it's very important to assist and establish stylists, because firstly, you're not going into styling blind. There are aspects of it that no one really gets to see, which
mm,
we've pointed some of it, in terms of like how do you, especially as a freelance stylist, if you don't have an agent, and often of the time that's how you begin. You definitely begin without an agent or anyone representing you. So you're your own agent, and you're speaking to clients who have a very or just people who have very specific ideas of what they want to do, and so you need to learn the skills and on how to, yeah, just navigate the industry. And I think with me and the generation I grew up, no one really sat and taught you and say, oh, this is how you do it. Even you had to also have some level of instinctive interest. And I think
yeah,
I was very curious, and I think that's what and I really wanted to learn. I was very excited to really know like how it worked, and not just that, I was really excited to contribute to the careers of the stylist and artist I was working with, because I really enjoyed their work and I really wanted to see them also bloom and grow with them, sort of thing. So for me, it was like, oh, this is a great value exchange.
yeah,
I can learn and see how things are done. I can learn, what not to do or what to do or how things are done. And, at the same time, I can contribute. And in the end, I'm better off, right? So this
yeah.
is, this is great for me, really. Um, And yeah, so that was how I saw it. And I think for me as well, some of the motivation at the beginning was like I really did not want to. I was like, I don't want to be a broke artist.
Yeah.
But that was so that is so funny because that I mean never broke, of course. But on the financial side, you might you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna make sure I put everything in. So by the time I graduate and everything, I'm set to go and you know, I'm ready to launch myself, which is absolutely valid and and good. But one thing I would say coming from me in this generation is that don't also be too in a haste because trust me, you want that time. You want that time
Yeah.
to really get to like learn from other people. You want that time to make those mistakes. And then turning what an advice I would give to people, anyone turning up on set for the first time. Because for example, for me, the first really professional set I stepped on was your set.
Was
Um,
it? Oh my God. With Lewis
exactly.
Hamilton. Yeah. Oh my God. I didn't know that was like your first shoot.
Exactly. Well, I know, right? Which is crazy. Exactly. And that's the point I'm
Yeah.
about to make. But before that, of course, I had done other like sort of assistant like work, like Fashion Week, like dressing and things like that,
Mm.
right? And do other experiences. But on like a profession, like on like that scale of shooting, that was the first set. Obviously, I had been on assisting someone
Oh, I
else,
love
but
this.
yeah, thank you. But what informed me was I think those other experiences from other places that I didn't, that I might not have been fully interested in, right? Behind the fashion show, just learning, the etiquette of like, okay, how does this relationship work? Like what, because as a dresser, you're just standing by, the stylist is there and you're literally just dressing. But you see how, some communications happen and, how things flow. So that way you use that, take that skill and inform it to your first day. And I do tell a lot of people, a lot of it, especially as an assistant at first, is common sense. I don't mean to, be condescending in any way, but it really is
Mm.
that is really just, you know, anticipating someone else's need. For example, just thinking, okay, what might they need as a stylist? Their kits, how do you um like create boundaries also in knowing how to, for example, with me, growing my like career before I before I finish, or transgressing in a different, so
Mm.
growing in a different way, like from what the industry typically is. I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't doing anything that puts my bosses, like my other sides, in a bad light, or it's because it's a very serious, and that's the thing. I don't take myself very like seriously in that way, but I take my work and my things, in that
Yeah.
sense, very, seriously.
You
So
are a
it's like,
true professional, Seyon, a true
thank you.
professional.
So I think that is like definitely the way to go. Just to make sure that you, because it really helps you understand again the behind the scene flow of things. Understanding how, yeah, just everything works, how everyone comes together. Exactly. How all the crazy things that are happening, how they fit in. Because
Yeah.
when you start, you might not know everything. You don't know how production works. You might not know how certain things work. But really and truly, I think, like I said, with me, I'm also very observant, and I'm very present. So I make sure when you're truly present and observant, you will pick up on things without anybody telling you, because you've been watching. And
Has he been
I learned,
watching?
yeah, exactly, you're literally watching and soaking it in. And I really learn from the best. And it's also important to work with people that um are supportive of you as well.
Yeah.
Because again, like you were also one of the people, where I think I had also that, I felt that comfortable and vulnerable to come to you to say, oh, so and so happened, or this person said this, and you're like, no, Seyon, that is not your role. You shouldn't be doing that. And setting those boundaries, and that's what I mean as well. Those ways, that's what you learn. What
Mm.
boundaries, what the boundaries are, like, what can be, that's, yeah, that's literally how you, is the best way to learn, rather than, going in blind, I say.
Going in blind.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and yeah, it's great. And also you build your, that also actually helps you to build relationships also when
Yeah,
you're
your
when you're ready.
network.
Exactly, because
Exactly.
at the end of the day, it's not just I think a lot of people see in a way where it's like, oh, it's just me and I'm the stylist and that kind of thing. But no, it's actually a network. You're building, you're part of a legacy of those people you've worked with,
Yeah,
right, you've worked for, and vice versa. And you build with them, and vice, and that continues on, and that's how it is, and well, that's how it should be,
perfect.
and yeah, and
Yeah.
genuinely as well, you know.
And genuine, I think that's important as well. It's
Yeah,
genuine connections and you will
yeah,
help each other out. Great.
yeah.
I have a little section in the book written about how art can inspire styling and how
Hmm.
styling too can inspire art. And I actually interviewed the art entrepreneur Maureen Tanguy.
Okay.
And I said, okay, what is your favorite art and fashion combination? And she said Alexander McQueen's Savage Beauty Show will be her
Hmm.
forever reference for blending fashion and art. And when I think of fashion and art, I think of you because
Oh.
you became the face. I love that I showed up at this exhibition and there was Seyon. You became the face of the iconic Africa fashion exhibition that was held
Mm.
at the V&A. So tell us about the exhibition and how did it feel to be in an exhibition and the whole image making process, but actually in front of the camera this
Okay.
time?
Very humbled for 100%, even about that process and that experience. And thank you, oh my God, for that. Sorry, that the introduction was so lovely. Yeah, funny enough, I think as part of like generally my career as well, I think I've also partly thrown myself into being on that also on that side of the camera also and like telling that story through myself to begin with. And like I said, I form a community of people as well. And I think um because that community was again very true to myself, um, this was able to come about in that way because I had at the time was one of like my muses and a friend who got asked to basically work in like creative direction of like the project with them behind the scenes, and they got me involved with it, and and because they knew like this was again something that I do, and this is it's something that is basically for my community and a part of a community that and we had been doing work in this sort of realm for a while, so to them it just made sense, and I was like this is amazing, great, let's sort of do it. But initially I wasn't actually involved, meant to be involved, in front of a camera. It was more like behind the scenes and stuff. And I turned up on the day, and literally the production and like the director, liking lovely, lovely team. They were just like, you're basically, you're basically
Wow.
about you're you also embody the project, and this project is about like you, people like you, in physicality. So it made sense. And they asked me to do it, and I said yes. And there and then, I was part of the project.
I love
And
that.
I know, interesting, right? And yeah, for me, I guess there was no specific need again for like some sort of any like preparation in that sense because again, this is something I've lived basically my whole life. Being a part of dance, music, culture, um, and just that expression. So yeah, it was yeah. That's the way it came about. It was it was
Fantastic. I
amazing,
love it.
and
So it
yeah,
wasn't planned, but it was meant to be.
yeah. No,
It all
exactly.
aligned.
Do you know what I mean? Exactly, alignment, and this is what I mean as well about also things being meant for you if they're for you, and then also being available, I guess, to show up as well. Because I could have, said, oh, I've already done like my bit behind the scenes, and oh, I'm never getting credited for this anyway, or things along those
Yeah.
lines, and not, give too much thought about it. But I that's the part I say also is really great to try to make sure you're quieting down the noise and tuning out the noise, which is like everything outside,
Mm.
whatever the opinion is that's feeding into you, and just being true to yourself. And that would mean I was literally turning up to me. I was turning up for my community, for like my friends who, were involved in it, and me being involved in it, where, regardless again of credit or not or anything. Um, and yeah, and it turned into what it turned into, and everyone, yeah, it's amazing. It's really
I love
amazing.
it.
Yeah.
So from there to today, what are you up to today? Tell us your plans. What are you working
Ooh.
on now? And also, how can people find you on social media? Because I'm sure people will want to follow you.
I'm actually currently studying and getting like my master's at Central St. Martin's, doing fashion communication, which is exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm actually towards like the um you could say towards like the mid or end journey of that. So I'm actually preparing for like my sort of next big major like sort of personal project, which is exciting. And I'm also working on like a museum sort of project, which I can't really say too much about yet,
Okay.
but
I
it's
look forward to
great.
seeing it.
Yeah, so definitely this is an exclusive for you, Kristine.
Ooh, I
So
love
yeah,
it.
so yeah, I'm currently working on that, which will be very exciting, and I'll definitely have more information on that for sure for soon. Um, and aside that, I'm literally working on like some of the commercial work and stuff that we do, like working with clients, and like some brands and stuff that I work with. Um, and yeah, I just hope to. I think going forward, I definitely wanna. I'm really excited about the personal projects and like the museum one I
Mm,
mentioned, because I feel like those projects will really showcase even more like
your
what
vision.
my vision is exactly at this stage as well. Because yeah, I think it's a great tipping point for me, like in my career as well. And like yes, I haven't taken all those experiences and all those um fine tuning time and the growing pains, and now I feel I can put it into a great perspective and experience for other people to see what might be in this set.
Seyon's
So
brain in an exhibition. That's what I'm imagining.
imagine mine and
I
others,
can't
that
wait.
I'm
I
collaborating,
can't
so I'm
wait.
working with. Yeah, so it'll be, yeah, I'm excited for that for sure. And yes, you can find me on at the official Seyon on Instagram. Um, I think it's yes, same thing on TikTok as well. And yeah, that's those are my main sources right now, I think.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Seyon. It's
Thank you,
been so
Christine.
fantastic to catch up with you and to
Amazing,
hear
amazing.
your wealth of experience. And so much of it is what I also would say myself. So I love that
Awesome.
what you're saying is just, it really touches my heart. And I love
Thank
the way
you.
you speak with such authenticity and with honesty and with presence. So thank you so much for this evening. And
Thank
thank you to
you.
everyone for watching too. If
Thank
anyone
you
would
guys.
like to pick up a copy of Fashion Stylist, just head to the link in my bio. Hey, have a good evening, Seon.
And you too, Christine. I'm
Take
looking forward to
care.
seeing you as well in
Oh,
person
yeah, I
soon.
can't wait
All
to
right.
see you soon. Mwah.
Yeah.
Take
Take care.
care.
Thank you,
Bye
everyone.
bye.